became pregnant as a result of non-consensual sexual encounter. And I'd been told by these colleagues that there was a phone number in the Toronto Star, and if I would phone that number, it would bring me help. Well, the help that it brought me was to bait me into the notion, the lie, that I could just undo the date rape, that I could undo the pregnancy, and that I could turn back the page to the night before and who I was before. I bought into the lie that abortion could just take the page out of my life and I could start over. And so I went along that route of deception and found people to drive me to the abortion facility, gathered up the money, proceeded to the abortion facility, handed over the money, signed a waiver saying that nobody would be responsible for what would happen to me. And then I woke up. I woke up to the truth that what I was about to walk into wasn't going to undo anything. It was going to start a whole new path. And I couldn't walk away. So I went through the motions. And I remember the vulnerability I felt, and I remember the fear, and I remember that I was told that it wouldn't take long, it would be over quickly, it would not hurt, and everything would go back to normal. And I knew at the time that nothing would ever be normal again. I had a right-ordered response to the moment that my child died. I had a profound sense of the child's presence as I watched the bottle next to my right foot fill up with blood, the remains of my child. It was a traumatic experience on every level. The pain was excruciating. I remember being told to be still because I had moved, and little did I know how serious that could have been. Had the scalpel slipped because of my movement, the damage that could have been done, the hemorrhage that could have been created, like I was standing on the precipice at some level between life and death for myself and for my child. You know, I couldn't make sense of actually, I suppose you could call it the split that was going on. I was going through an action that was supposed to restore my life, but at the expense of ending a life. At the moment when I now know the death of my child happened, I had a sense of the child's soul. And I remember it was at that moment I began to cry. And I cried uncontrollably. And I cried because I knew I had crossed a line and I couldn't go back. I couldn't undo it. I couldn't make the contents of that bottle return to its wholeness. And that pain led me to try to numb myself through taking on a whole different way of life, using alcohol, becoming sexually, quote unquote, liberated, moving from one sexual encounter to another, using drugs eventually. And I would go through these cycles of intensity of this, trying to numb this pain, and then feeling like this moral sense that what I was doing was wrong, and I would try to clean up my act, but I could never get back to the beginning. I didn't plan it, but the illusion that death could end my pain was frequently in front of me. Over and over, I would think, oh, if I could just die, you know, it would be over. Well, thankfully, that isn't where the story ended. Nobody can understand why a young woman in her 20s was, so sick, and I had walking pneumonia and shingles, and they didn't understand the root, but I had a sense. I knew the root was connected to the abortion. And I was afraid of the marital embrace. I was afraid of becoming pregnant. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but if a pregnant woman walked into the room, I walked out. I would avoid baby showers. I would avoid discussion about family life. And on the 4th of December in '86, my husband rushed me to OR to emerge. And I was diagnosed with a ruptured ectopic pregnancy. And as I recovered from the loss of the physical surgery, as I recovered from that physical surgery, I began to ponder deeply what we had lost. Walter and I lost the only other child that I would conceive. We prayed to know, was it a boy, was it a girl? And the name that came to us was Joseph Michael. And so our son, Joseph Michael Steenstra, died at approximately 9 to 10 weeks gestation. And as I grieved Joseph's death, Joseph Michael's death, I began to ponder and find the courage to face the truth honestly. I looked at an image of an unborn baby, what Joseph would have looked like at that stage of development, and the reality of that hit me. And it's like, oh my. And so I looked at this image of what's, Joseph and what size he was, and I found the courage to think about the child who died through abortion. And I remember in my heart wondering, was it a boy or was it a girl? And it was, I hardly had the thought, then a name entered my mind, and it was Sarah Elizabeth. And at some level, I knew that there was one who wanted me to know the truth, God. That there really was a person. And that person was a girl. Sarah Elizabeth. People longed for us to have children, the delight that it would have brought to so many. The project, what's missing? You can hardly put into words what is missing.